What is going on? Welcome to ednews.com. It's your host, EJ Carrion. Today, I have two awesome people out of Oregon. I have Rachael George, Director of Student Services and Elementary Programs at Oregon Trail School District. And I have John George, Principal of Dexter McCarty Middle School. Welcome to Ed News.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Hey, good to be here.
So, what I would love to dissect and discuss is how has coming back have been for both of you as focusing on middle school and elementary, and then just kind of, I guess, a little bit more about your district and student population.
No, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. And we chuckled, we both did when you asked that, because we wrote I think, a fantastic article, a game plan for success. And we wrote it in the spring. And I have to be really honest, we were thinking we were coming out of COVID. And so we had that really in mind. And lo and behold, at least in Oregon, like COVID didn't go away. In fact, it completely reared up and impacted a lot of areas that we weren't expecting. So our year has really transpired into something completely different that we weren't expecting, which has created a lot of challenges and obstacles. But I think looking back, I think the same core aspects that we included really stay true. Just really wasn't what we were thinking at the time. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, the return has been very interesting. I've been in education for about 27, 28 years now, and I've never seen anything like this in terms of not only the students and their return, but also the adults in the building. The kids are coming back. Our sixth graders haven't been in school since they were third graders. So there is a huge amount of reteaching that has to occur just in terms of the simple things, not even talking the education, but it's just the day-to-days and the minute by minutes, the expectations that happen. In addition to that, the social emotional need of everybody involved is just off the charts. So it's been a very trying time, but yet it's also been very rewarding in the moments that we're able to have.
Yeah, I know the game plan kind of focus both on students and staff. And as a principal and former principal, I know maximizing the school day and time is the greatest asset. How do you look at doing that? Being able to support both parties while also, I know, still having to deal with the curriculum and getting state standards completed.
I think that's like the $1 million question. So we have a really strong philosophy in our district, and it's common with what John and I both share. We are married, we are principals and educators, so you can imagine that we talk education and shop like 24 hours. So we believe that you can actually do a blend of social emotional learning, involvement, support for students, while also really targeting the academic skills. And when you teach them in isolation, that really comes into where you're really fighting over the time, you're in conflict with each other, but blending them and having that integration is really imperative. We're talking bell to bell instruction, but also utilizing those amazing moments that you have throughout the day, which we all do, to be able to really talk about how did that conversation go? How did you just respond? Were there some better strategies and skills? Hey, I see that you're just feeling really anxious or really stressed out. What are some steps that you can do to help lower that so then you're ready to learn? Those are all great things to teach in isolation, but it doesn't ever get translated into practice. So let's do that throughout the class period. But first and foremost, it starts with relationships. And that should be front loaded at the beginning of every year, semester, quarter, trimester, whatever schedule that you're on. But it also needs to be, again, embedded, right? Like you don't show that you care just during the first 2 weeks of school, and then you just put it on the back burner and don't check in with kids. Get to know the students, know them by name, greet them at the door, have conversations about their life outside of school, show an interest. That's imperative. If they don't think that you care, they're not going to work for you, and they're not going to be the one to reach out and build that bridge. You need to do so as the adult.
Yeah, the relationship piece is obviously the key to everything that we do. In my school in particular, we've started to combine the inclusive practices both academically and behaviorally. We're using a strategy of the what, why, how, in terms of what students are learning and introducing that and being consistent about that every day. But at the same time, we're taking universal design for learning strategies and applying them consistently across grade level. So our teams are sitting down and saying, okay, here's what we're seeing. What kind of strategies will work in our classrooms, and how do we implement it so that they're getting it consistently across the board? And I think that's been an imperative for us.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead and also kind of discuss how do you look at it from a staff time. I know with staff having with kids in front of class or finding time for them
Mhm.
to get together or to provide that kind of support. What's that been looking like?
This is huge. And I think this is not being talked about enough.
Yeah.
Teachers, staff, like we thought 2020 was hard. We thought even coming in and like finishing last year was really, really hard. And just a quick glance on social media or checking in with your educator friends, that'll easily and quickly tell you that that's not the
Hmm.
case. Like this year is significantly harder. And I'm not sure if it's tied back into the piece that I mentioned earlier. Like I thought this was going to be a normal year and it's not. Like maybe I got my hopes up and dreams crushed and that's part of that grieving process. I'm not sure. But even that aside, the hours that folks are putting in, I think innately educators always want what's best for students and they want to grow them at incredible rates. And and right now it's really challenging, right? Like they're coming in with a different skill set than when we're used to. If I'm a seventh grade math teacher, I maybe am comfortable with being able to teach and scaffold fifth grade math, sixth grade math. But we have folks that are still like at third grade, third grade math coming in at seventh grade. And that's really, really stressful. It's putting me outside my comfort zone as an educator. It's also adding additional prep time on, trying to do all the research, do all the planning, do all the collaboration, because collaboration
Yeah.
is so helpful, right? And that's going to be the key to really get through this. But let's also talk about quarantining or the impacts that COVID can have on you as an individual outside of the school system. That's significant. We just had
Yeah.
somebody that their 2-year-old was exposed at daycare and now they have to be up for 20 days and now they need to have a sub and we don't have any subs and like it
Mm.
just goes on and on and on. The schedules aren't predictable, the staffing's not predictable, and when it's not, we all know that to have a safe and healthy classroom, we need that predictability, and the same goes for staff. And so I think that as building and district leaders, we need to be very, very cognizant about the workloads that we're imposing and asking. We need to really stop with the mandates. We need to skinny things up. We need to get into buildings
Hmm.
as district leaders and superintendents, go see what teachers and principals are struggling with. Principals need to be in the classroom watching and seeing what's going on and asking the question, how can I support you? And that question in of itself, how can I support you, needs to be said more and more and
Hmm.
more. And when someone responds with, I don't know, we need to have the courage to dig deeper and then also do some of the work of taking things off because this isn't sustainable and it's not good for mental health. I know a lot of folks that are leaving education at the classroom and leadership level, and that's even more concerning. That vacuum in Oregon, we just lowered our substitute level that you just need to have a high school diploma. You used to need a master's degree. And I'm concerned about the future of education for that very reason.
Mm.
I think the thing that we have to remember most, especially is, being in a building every day is it's our mantra this year. It's grace and patience.
Mm.
The pandemic has created all kinds of situations for everybody. So we always have to remember that, yeah, everybody's got stuff going on, not just the kids, but the adults. And you have to have grace and patience when you're dealing with them. I've always had an open door policy. Even when I'm in talking to somebody, my door's open in case something comes up. I've had to actually blow out a wall and make it into a big garage door now because it just is coming so fast and so much. But taking the time for me, my teachers are the most important thing that I do because the most important thing they do is the kids. So I have to take care of them the best that I can and do whatever I can for them. I have to know and understand and have a connection with them enough that I know what's going on in their lives and what's impacting positively or negatively what they're doing in the classroom. So it's the psychology degree in me that's coming out a little bit more this year.
Yeah. Rachel,
And that's just at work. That's not counting at home either.
yeah, being married to educators, that could always lead to more conversations than
But
around it and bringing it home. It'd be hard not to.
Rachel says, she wants to know what principal do. She gets to hear what's going on in the building every single day.
It's been helpful. I've canceled lots of meetings and PD from his
Yeah.
input.
Hey, that's perfect. Rachel, I do want to go back to the substitute teacher thing, and then if we could talk about what that looks like
Yeah.
from the school district and then also from maybe colleagues out in state, outside of state. Are you seeing that kind of going down to a high school diploma more normal across the country? and has it alleviated some substitute teaching holes that might happen across this district?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that Oregon was kind of in an interesting situation with some really high standards over the past couple of years.
Got it.
I think that that adjustment and change down to the high school diploma probably is on par with a lot of other areas throughout the nation. It hasn't helped yet, and that's the bummer part. Whether it's like the substitute pay rate, whether it's just like the working conditions, or it's a darn hard job, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's just really challenging with recruitment. I would also offer up the idea that I don't think education is alone in this. You know, take a drive down any main street in any town, city, rural area, and you're going to find help wanted jobs out there. You know, they're on the signs for McDonald's
Yeah.
with signing bonuses. Wildland Fire has an incredibly hard time finding firefighters for the state and national level because of their pay. You can make the same amount and have it less stressful doing something else.
Mm.
And it's just not an attractive piece, and the workforce just isn't ready to be there. So I think it's a nationwide issue, you know, and it has been, right? The pipeline to education as principal leaders, as teachers, and the grow your own mentality has been always something that's been brought up and suggested. And I think, at least in our district, we've really taken that to heart with the substitute piece and with job openings that are permanently open. We're looking at folks that maybe don't have an associate's or a 4-year degree. And we're like, hey, we'll sponsor you. We see how you make relationships with kids. Let's put you through school. Let's get you in a job that you're really successful at and you're meant for. And we're going to remove the barriers. We have found success with that, but that also, there's some money attached to it, right? Because you're paying for that education, you're building that relationship. It is paid off for us. I think that's been really helpful. I've heard that tip from other school districts and people throughout the state in finding, especially when you're trying to diversify your workforce to make it more representative of your student population. But it's a real life challenge. You know, I work with some educators in Colorado, and they're subbing like every class period along with everybody else. So then that ties into teacher burnout too, right? Like I normally have a 50-minute prep during class period 5, and I'm covering a language arts class, not my wheelhouse, but we're short staffed, and that's K-12 going on, and that's significantly contributing to it. But the plus side, because let's look at the positive, we're not closing schools and we're open, right? So people are really going gangbusters to support that. It just is a little tiring.
Yeah.
I think the not requiring the bachelor's degree, the decision to move forward with that is pretty much on a district by district level. And I think the key to it is what Rachel's school district is doing, is providing that mentorship piece as you move along. I know that we have a few in our school district that have just come on, and it's more of a mentee role where they're co-teaching so that they can get the online or the immediate instructional piece as they go through it, that experience on a daily basis. But in terms of subs, just to give you a little rundown, in my district, we're a school district of about 13,000 students, and we have 102 staff absences today, and only 48% of them are filled. Yeah. So, you know, we have the teachers covering on their prep time. We have some classified staff that do have bachelor's degrees that we have given emergency licenses to. I sub every single day. I'm in the classroom, you know, bouncing around. We even have teachers that will pull their class and 1 or 2 other classes into our common area. So
yeah. No, I think I was wondering, you know, you guys spoke about how you guys wrote this in the spring with the idea of coming back and not being still not able to be back. But I would imagine also surprised by all of the, I guess the other stuff that kind of came with going back to school, in the sense of social media. You mentioned like the schools being messed with, and then also just the safety of your educators throughout the community. How has that conversation been as leaders and being there for the team?
That so many directions to go on this one. You know, I'll start with the social media piece. It can be an incredible learning tool. It can provide incredible experiences. You know, we use programs like Nepris that provide us online streaming with professional individuals for our STEAM programs. so we can get into, but then you turn around and then there's Twitter and TikTok and all of the other things that go on. And I think having this long period of time without, in many cases, without any monitoring of use, has really created some significant challenges for all of us. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in the things that we're seeing. But again, there's both positive along with the negative.
Yeah.
So trying to make sure we lean more in that direction and get the kids to follow is a huge challenge.
And I'm glad you brought up the tech piece, John, because that's really true and very relevant at the elementary school. We're finally tracking what programs they're on through Grow Guardian and their usage and the sites that they're clicking on and engaging with. And it's been a shock, like really, really big shock. Things that we typically thought only occurred at the middle school are now being searched, and not just randomly searched at the elementary level at some really young ages. So I think that the impact of remote learning, one-to-one devices, and some of that tech education really needs to be at the forefront of what we're doing. I think thinking back on where we were really looking at last spring and with where we're at right now, I think one of the pieces that still is very relevant is the equitable and fair grading practices. We need to get really crystal clear about what we're teaching in the classroom. We need to have those grounded in power standards or essential standards, because we don't have time to do it all. We don't have time to teach 7th grade math and then scaffold the 6th grade and the 5th grade because they didn't participate for the last 2 years during COVID. Like, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to teach actually like 7th grade math in a normal year. Like, let's be honest. So we need to have some really strong conversations within our PLCs, within our building, within our district. So we have that vertical alignment, we have a viable curriculum, and alignment with those standards. And Doug Reeves is a fantastic book with fast grading that we highly recommend, because he doesn't just talk about eliminating the 0 or re-looking at not giving any kid an F. Like, there's a lot of logic behind it, and you can't enter in any of these conversations when you're talking about grading or power standards without causing a lot of emotion and some fur kind of coming up a little bit with people. And that book just navigates it really well in a way that it's easy for folks to understand.
The prioritization piece is really key in all of this. It's really easy to say, oh, let's go down the equitable grading practices route and the power standards route, and you really got to marry them all together and make them one thing, one direction. And these are the pieces that are associated with it, and make sure that it's really cohesive. Because if it comes as an individual thing over here and over there and over there, and this time, even not during the pandemic, it's overwhelming, but even more so now. So,
yeah. Well, you guys got to the last question around grading, so I think you guys were reading where to go. And so I know maximizing student time with students is important. So the fact that you guys were able to give me some time during this school day, I really appreciate it. And you guys have been super helpful, and just your insights as a couple, as leaders, you could truly feel it, and really appreciate it.
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.